they have within their organization that are available to students to apply for, whether that be jobs, internships, graduate researchships, or anything of that nature. We have collected numerous handouts from the different professionals that provide more information on some of the things that they will be talking about during their presentation, and we will send that out via email to all of the participants after the meeting. Once again, all of this information as well as their bios will be available at the end of this event. But to get us started, we have Alana Taylor from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So I will let her get started and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, hello, can everybody hear me? For the people who need to hear me. Just one quick question. Am I also allowed to share my screen?
Yes, you should be. There should be a green button at the bottom.
Yes, okay, just checking. Okay, well, hello everyone. My name again is Alani Taylor. I have worked for the Army Corps of Engineers as a environmental regulator and biologist for 5.5 years, and before that I worked for the Office of Surface Mining, also as an environmental regulator. And I will speak briefly about a couple of the opportunities that are available within the Corps, but I thought it would also be worthwhile to give students some perspective on how to navigate, and then let me take off my glasses here, how to navigate the website that can sometimes be daunting, known as usajobs.gov. It is the website that any of you who are interested in applying for federal jobs will likely have to go through if you want to be finding full-time employment. And it's not always easy to really understand how to play the game that can be involved with it. So like I said, I work for the Army Corps of Engineers, and depending on what your education and career outlook is, we may very well have different perspectives on what the Corps of Engineers is all involved in. Most recently in the news, we've certainly heard about the Corps of Engineers' involvement with COVID relief, and we know of their involvement with other emergency relief efforts. But the Corps of Engineers is not just simply a bunch of engineers. And if you come from an ecology or environmental science background, you very likely first got to know about the Army Corps of Engineers by hearing about their involvement in enforcing the parts of the Clean Water Act. But that is also not the only thing that the Corps is involved in. The Corps of Engineers definitely has roles to play in a wide variety of things, which means that depending on what your interests and goals are, there may very well be an opportunity for you in one way or another, whether that be as a scientist, as a project manager, as a policy reviewer. There's a whole variety of ways that you could find something to succeed in and interest you with the Corps of Engineers. My work directly involves reviewing permit applications for projects that need to comply with the Clean Water Act, Section 404, and also Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act, which basically means that any work that is going to be temporarily or permanently impacting official waters of the U.S., which also includes a number of wetlands if they're adjacent to streams or rivers or lakes and other significant water bodies. The applicant who's going to be doing work needs to demonstrate that they're going to minimize the impact to those water bodies as much as possible. And the review that I do involves assessment of the natural resources that are in those areas, the potential impacts to endangered species. It also involves collaboration with state agencies that have interest in those areas, as well as agencies that speak for cultural resource interests, as well as interests of tribal, or there's also entities that speak for tribal interests. Again, as I noted, all of these jobs that are available with the Corps and with other agencies start with often with an application, or almost always with an application on USA Jobs. And let me go ahead and share my screen. There are a whole variety of jobs available with searching in USA Jobs, and it can be tough sometimes to fully, let's see, there we go, to really narrow down what you want to search for. Something that I had found that I wanted to just demonstrate is you can actually search for jobs that are specific to recent graduates or students. The overview and descriptions and locations, that all that general information is available on the site. Often you'll be able to also call up the offices that have the job openings. I definitely recommend that you go ahead with giving those particular offices a call. The basic thing to be aware of is that the application process first goes through, it goes through basically 2 steps of selection. And the first person that does the selection is very likely not the person who is directly involved with the work itself. And so really they're just going to be looking for keywords to make sure that you are applying for, that you're describing your experiences as being something that's relevant to the job itself. As you can see here, this description for recent graduate, there's opportunities in a whole variety of places, and it involves a number of job categories. Now, what this means is not that you have to have experience in every single one of these job families, but it means that there are openings related to all of these various job categories. And if you click on each one, you can get a bit more detail about the requirements that fit under each of those categories. So if you see yourself falling into this category, you would click on that, and well, that's not going to where I wanted to go. That's showing more. But again, reading the responsibilities and the duties, you're going to basically want to reflect in your application that you've done work that's specific to these types of responsibilities. And you're going to, it's not wrong basically to really just cut and paste some of the direct language from the announcement into your job description, because that first person who's going to be reviewing these applications may not necessarily know how what you've done directly applies to the job itself, and really they're going to be looking for keywords. It's that, and then after that person looks at it, it goes to the actual the group or panel or specific person that's going to be doing the hiring. That person's going to be a lot more knowledgeable about what's required for the job, and you're also going to want for your description of your experiences and your knowledge and your background to be okay. Might want to check on some questions, but you also want to demonstrate that you are showing that you can do the work that's going to be expected. Now, one of the benefits of the USA Jobs process is you can be a whole lot more descriptive with USA Jobs than with a one-page resume. And so it's very important to not just simply cut and paste what you might have already included in a 1 or 2 page resume or CV into what your application file would be for USA Jobs. In USA Jobs, you can be a whole lot more descriptive about what your actual skills and experience are. And it is encouraged to go into detail about any work that you may have done with internships or with projects that you may have worked on, whether that was you working on it by yourself or you working with the team. Go into any detail that is going to be relevant to the job, the job announcement, to show that you are that you have the skills. And is this your resume? No, what I'm showing here is an announcement from is a sample announcement from USA Jobs. So this is an announcement for the Army Corps of Engineers for recent graduates. There are a number of jobs that are specifically where they're specifically looking for either current students or they're looking for recent graduates. And so I had shared this to just show you a demonstration of one of the announcements that's currently available for the Army Corps of Engineers. I have been told by hiring colleagues that while the detail is helpful, a hiring manager is still looking at many resumes. Yes, and that's where there's definitely a balance between providing the keywords that are relevant to the job announcement itself and being concise. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that you need to provide a paragraph, but you definitely don't need to whittle it down to 2 sentences or 3 lines the way that you would on a resume. You can write in full sentences. You can highlight specific successes. But yes, I mean, you certainly are going to keep it concise, and the text box in the application itself is going to allow for you to do that. And it's definitely, and even after you go through submitting the application, it's absolutely still worthwhile to call the office, check in, see what's going on with their review. If you haven't gotten an update in a while, it's definitely worthwhile to ask for specific or suggestions from the contact person that is noted in the announcement about what particularly they're looking for. Asking for that advice and them just knowing your name will make your name memorable if your application gets past that first selection process and gets to the people that are going to be making those hiring decisions. And I also wanted to note that even with just looking for jobs on USA jobs.gov, you can still do those, you can still make use of career fairs or contacting offices directly to apply for jobs or find out about opportunities that are going to be coming up in the near future. Sometimes you're not going to see everything that's that's on USA Jobs, but you may be able to find out, and it may not be posted until perhaps a couple weeks before, but if you call those offices that you think in places that you think you might want to work, you would actually find out that they're going to be posting something in another month or later on in the year. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Alani. That was really helpful, and I think people got a lot out of that. We're going to transition. Like I said before, any handouts will be given at the end of this event. We'll send it out via email. Next, we have James Thomas from HDR Engineering, and I will stop sharing my screen. And James, you can take over, and if you need, you can go ahead and share your screen as well.
Thank you, Anjali. Good morning, everybody. As Anjali said, my name is James Thomas. I'm a professional wetland scientist with HDR Incorporated. I work out of our Austin office. I help manage our environmental sciences and planning practice in the South Central region. So that's Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana, a little bit of eastern New Mexico and up into Arkansas. And also I serve as our permitting practice lead in our environmental sciences cross sector. And I'll explain a little bit more of what that means shortly. But, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I think, you know, one thing that is interesting is, you know, Alani mentioned the 404 Section 10 permitting. That's primarily where me and a lot of the folks who work with me spend our time, is working for our clients and their projects, helping them get through the regulatory processes, as well as doing mitigation and restoration projects. But before I got into consulting with a firm the size of HDR, I worked for a small consulting firm, and then I went to work for Texas Parks and Wildlife as a wetland biologist, waterfowl biologist at Parks and Wildlife. Had 3 years at both of those roles, and then I've been with HDR 20 years now, helping lead this practice in the South Central region. So I think I kind of can see things from, you know, the agency, small firm and large firm perspective. I think from my experience, each of those jobs have pros and cons. You can get a lot out of working for agencies like Alani and her co-workers. Small firms definitely play their role, and sometimes they have specialists that we need on our projects. And then large firms, you know, can be an excellent opportunity as well. So, you know, tomorrow I'll be on the mock interview time frame, but if there's not somebody that's set up with a mock interview, I'd like to prioritize those. But if somebody just wants to talk about, you know, I've got these two opportunities, you know, I'm more than happy to talk through things that you might consider, just because I've kind of been in 3 different roles. So I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about HDR's practice. So environmental sciences and planning at HDR. A little bit of background about HDR. We're a 100% employee-owned international consulting and design company. We're number 4 in the latest Engineering News records for environmental sciences and planning. That's really based largely on the amount of fees earned in those particular fields. So, you know, we're probably one of the larger 100% employee-owned firms. We have over 700 environmental staff, and that's really the natural resource staff. We have a lot of other scientists that support other parts of our business, fisheries folks and cultural resource staff. This is really the biologist, wetland folks. We have over 30 professional wetland scientists and 120 other wetland specialists spread around primarily the United States and Canada, but a few in other areas. Some of those are working on a temporary assignment on a large project, maybe in the Middle East or in Europe, and then most of those are based in the United States or Canada, though. So our culture, because we're employee-owned, I believe it's a very collaborative work environment. We truly, I think, try to put the best team on the project to help address the particular, whether it's an environmental constraint that we need to try to avoid or minimize impacts to, or if we can't, how to best work out a mitigation option. We really get the opportunity to work on a very diverse set of projects. I think right now in the South Central region, we have over 140 active projects, probably, $9 million in backlog. And it is everything from roadways to power lines to just true restoration work for state agencies, the Corps of Engineers, or the Nature Conservancy we have contracts with. So it's a range of work, a lot of railroad, solar, wind farms, that type of thing. We have locations throughout North America, and even, as I mentioned, some beyond. And so if you are interested, let's see, let me keep going. But I did have the careers link here that you can access, hdrinc.com careers. And then I have my email here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. So as far as, a lot of you are probably, as I was when I got out of graduate school, my primary focus was on wetland restoration work. And so we do have technical experts in, wetland, stream, habitat mitigation, and restoration throughout the U.S. Some of those are starting to increase in other countries as well. And not always, but often we are working kind of in the full life cycle of a project, where it's the planning, design, and monitoring. There are a lot of other folks, some are niche, mitigation banking groups that have really taken off in the last 10 years that also focus on this and do a great job. We're really working with our clients maybe where there are not mitigation bank opportunities, or they are themselves a restoration focused entity, and we're supporting them with tidal monitoring or modeling work, stream modeling, floodplain modeling, and helping tie all those designs together along with our wetland staff. So, I just wanted to, let's see if there are any comments. I need to figure out how to get back to, I'm going to stop sharing and go back and see if there are any questions I need to answer. Okay. So again, if there are any questions, feel free to email me. So schedule time tomorrow at the mock interview or opportunity fair. I will say real quickly in my last minute, just because of COVID-19, our priority, because we are employee owned, is trying to find those folks in parts of the country that may be a little slower and get them engaged on our projects that we may have in South Central or somewhere else. We do a lot of what we call work sharing because it's expensive to hire and train staff, so we don't want to lose good staff in an area that's slower. But I do think there are going to be opportunities, especially as the economy starts to recover and things start to take off again. There'll be a lot of opportunities with HDR. There probably are a few where we really need somebody in particular. I think you can understand we'll prioritize our existing staff first and keeping them busy. However, I would encourage you to keep looking at HDR and other firms, large and small. Thanks a lot, and I will mute and turn it back over.
Thank you so much, James. That was a great presentation. Up next, we have Roy Menses from the Wetlands of Distinction, and I will let you go ahead and start sharing your screen if you would like to.
I think you had my few slides in a PDF, but if you say I could screen my
Yeah, you can
desktop.
Yeah, you can go ahead and screen share with your from your desktop.
So just stay with me a minute because I want to make sure everybody is seeing the same thing.
For sure. Yeah.
So do everybody see the opportunity fair that I have for SWS student section?
We do not. I'm not seeing it on my screen.
Okay.
You try the green button and share the specific screen at the bottom of the screen.
That's a good idea. Thank you for that tip. How are we doing
All right.
now? Maybe
Yep,
that's
we can see
better.
it. That looks great.
And should I launch the presentation so we don't see the extraneous header?
For sure. Yeah.
All right, how's that? Everybody should see it then.
Looks good. We can all see it.
And I've just to do a time check, I think I have at least 5 minutes. Is that correct?
10 minutes.
10 minutes, and my audio is good. You can hear me loud and clear?
Yes. Audio is perfect.
All right, so just by chance, it was very fortuitous that the sequence of the prior two presenters fits well with who I am and what I wanted to talk about. So welcome, everyone, and I hope you're getting a lot out of your time on this first ever video conference call. I have not sent in my bio or my headshot, but I can still do that so that if somebody wants to contact me in the future, I believe you'll be able to do that. So I would encourage you to do that based on anything that you want to ask me and what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides, or just anything in general. My work experience has been diverse. When someone talks about your career is not just a destiny, it's a journey, that's very true for me. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in science, biology and chemistry. I went to work for a pharma company, a large pharma company, for a period of time. Well, they gave me generous tuition refund. So then I went to graduate school for a PhD in coastal engineering from Stevens Institute in Hoboken, New Jersey. And upon finishing that graduate program that was paid for by my employer, I left them to get a job as an engineer with the Corps of Engineers out of New York District. So that's what I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about this morning, is my experience, my immediate experience working with the Corps of Engineers the past 15 years. I also wanted to comment about how your career can very much be a journey, not just a destination. That's what it was for me, because I started off as a biologist working as a chemist in pharma, and then graduate school and getting a PhD in coastal engineering, and now working for the Corps of Engineers, New York District, for the past 15 years. So why I thought that my presentation follows the others two, the first two nicely, is because we had someone else from the Corps of Engineers, which I'm going to talk about that. We also had somebody from the private sector. So it gives me an opportunity to look at aspects that are positive for both private sector versus the working for the federal government. So just a broad background for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. If you look at my slide that I'm presenting, we're basically divided up into districts and divisions. So this is a broad overview. Each one of these individual divisions can be further broken out in terms of where their actual offices are. But I wanted to comment on this slide that if you look at how these divisions are broken up, often what happens with the Army Corps of Engineers and the borders as to what division you're in has to do with the watershed. So Mississippi Valley Division is working with components of Mississippi watershed, which is quite large. For me, working in New York District as part of North Atlantic Division, New York District is defined by its borders for the watershed, primarily for Hudson River. So it's not exact, but just as a broad stroke generalization of how these divisions are broken up, it has to do with watersheds. And just because it's divided up by watersheds doesn't mean that we're just doing environmental work and things of that sort. So I think it's my second slide. My second slide, at the bottom left corner, it's showing more of where offices are located, where you could decide to work out of a specific office or apply for a first job. as per the nice discussion that we had from the first presenter about USA Jobs. So getting back to what I wanted to share with you and talking about U.S. Army Corps from my perspective, working in New York District, I've been in the civil side. So in the civil side, I've been doing projects that are related to environmental restoration for mitigation, flood risk management projects, and we also service the military property, military infrastructure that's within our division. So for me in New York District, that means if there's a project that's needed at West Point, that's within New York District. If West Point needs a new barrack, they need a new classroom, that would be on our military side. So I'm setting up this concept of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers having two separate wings, if you will. And one is looking at the military projects and the other one is looking at civil projects. So going from the top left, and I think this was talked about for the COVID-19 response, this is actual Governor Cuomo, and this is our New York District Commander, Colonel Asbury, and they were discussing plans to construct the hospital facilities that were needed. So this was on the military side. The military comes in terms of the federal funding that's available from the government, and they do things related to military type construction, like I mentioned, West Point. So that's why you see these folks in the military uniforms. I want to make a strong statement or make an important point about you do not have to be a military person in order to work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. That's a question that I hear often is, do I need to be in the military? No, I'm not in the military, nor I ever was in the military. I work on the civil side of the projects, as I mentioned, but I'm a civilian. So most of the large majority of folks that work for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are non-officers. So they are not in the military, they're civilian employees. To answer that question, if anybody was saying, do I need to be in the military? No, you do not. So looking at the other images that I see here, I'm just going through broad stroke some types of the Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. I think
Okay.
you went mute for a second.
Yeah, that was not me, but I saw something flash that said I was muted. Okay, so hopefully you didn't miss anything. I was about to talk about the civil project. I just looked at my clock. How much more time do I have?
You have about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, so quickly looking at what I've pictured here, if you look at the one in the center, this is Jamaica Bay Marsh Island Restoration Project. So we did a sand fill and planted vegetation. So this is involving biologists, planners, and civil engineers to design and construct the project. If you look at the top right-hand corner, this is a project that I'm currently involved with now, which is a flood risk management. We're building flood protection. So you see the flood wall here, and this is a crane that's drilling piles for the next section of flood wall panels. The next image that I'm pointing to now is a beach fill project. This was done in New Jersey for a beach fill restoration. So that's what these machinery equipment here is on a beach project that was for New Jersey. And again, I'm from New York District, so I cover the beaches in New York and New Jersey. And I'm trying to advance to my next slide. There we are. And I just wanted to give you a visual and the link down here of where to access USA Jobs. And a huge benefit to the federal government is its stable employment. And it gives you that mindset that if you want to make sure you have a job and it's not going to be susceptible to the woes of the economy when the economy is good or bad in 2008, 2009, I know the private sector was not hiring. I'm saying that politely. I think they're actually laying off. But U.S. government does not, of course, we have a much different budget than the private sector. So you're better buffered from what's happening with economic downturns. And of course, we're looking at another one, at least temporarily for COVID-19. But my job is relatively secure, knock wood, because we are funded by federal money. So I think that's 2 minutes. If I have more time, I could talk more, but I think I don't want to go over to respect other people that are presenting. I believe that these slides would be available, that you could share them. And I also wanted to comment again that I will put together and submit my bio. So if anybody wants to contact me and ask any questions, please feel free to do that. So I'll stop there and see if the moderator wants to pass this on to the next speaker.
Yes, I will. Thank you
Okay.
so much for your amazing presentation. And yes, we will make sure all of these materials are available to students after this presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, everyone.
And we should have a couple, like 5 or so minutes at the end of this session. So we'll open it up for questions to any of the panelists at the end. So now on to our next speaker, Megan Coney from the United States Geological Survey. And I will let you take over, Megan, and feel free to share your screen if you would like to.
Yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Megan Ganya. I work for the United States Geological Survey in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And it's great to be following from other feds, but there's some key differences between the USGS and the Army Corps of Engineers. And one is that we're a non-regulatory agency. And so we're a little bit a research arm. And so a lot of what we do is basic research like you might see more in academia. And we're just really tasked with providing products, tools, and guidance to our partners, who are a range of everything from citizens to local governments, state and federal partners. And NGOs, we collaborate a lot with, a wide range of people. And so I have to say, I really enjoy how my science directly feeds into a variety of management and other applications. It was a neat change from academia, but it still retains a lot of that basic research goals that academia does. And so what I wanted to do here was talk about opportunities that exist locally at both the USGS where I work, and as well as opportunities in the science community that I'm part of. And those are divided into both opportunities for undergraduates and at various degree parts of their career, graduate students, and then for people who are post-PhD. So first I want to start and say, where is Woods Hole? We're in Massachusetts. We're all the way in Cape Cod, so we're sticking out into the Atlantic Ocean, and we have a really vibrant science community. We have 6 large science institutions that range from nonprofits to the federal government. We have NOAA and USGS here, as well as some education opportunities. And so it's a really great place to do science, and it's a huge range. And so there's a lot of wetland science and coastal science that we do. Specifically, our staff at USGS, we have around 120 people in Woods Hole, and we mostly are master's level scientists, although we have some that would have engineering and technical backgrounds, and then we have a core group of research scientists who would be PhD level scientists. And specifically for looking for employment opportunities, there's been some great comments about USA Jobs. It's a hard website to navigate, and I'm just going to add to what Alani said. By my recommendation is to add a user profile and an account, and set up alerts so that if you have a specific location you want to be at, or a specific group you want to work with, agency you want to work with, just really give yourself the best possible chance to be alerted to job openings that are applicable to you, because sometimes they're not open for very long. And everything else that Alani said, I would really reiterate, look at the language of the job ad and reflect that and how your skill set and education matches that. And sometimes you need to give your education more clarity because the HR representatives aren't scientists themselves who are reviewing your first one. So for instance, if you took a class in the oceanography at Chesapeake Bay that had a chemistry lab and a geology lab in it, you're actually learning core chemistry and geology there, but that might not be apparent from the course title. And so you can just really reflect that. And so that you're getting credit for everything great that you have done. So I want to go through some of the opportunities, and I'm going to start with the undergrad opportunities that exist in Woods Hole that I've been part of. And so these are all internship opportunities for people who are either in their undergraduate or have just finished. And the first is a program with the National Association of Geoscience Teachers, so NAGT and USGS. It's a collaboration, and that is typically you're hired as a federal employee. So you would come in at what we call GS5 level. So that's right out of undergrad. And you're able to work between 10 and 12 weeks initially. And that program is great because you can actually extend the way that you're hired under a waiver. That waiver can actually be extended for up to 4 years if there's funding and a project available. And it's a wide range of science themes, but I would like to note that that's typically 1 or 2 at most per center. So there's no cohort. So anything that you might get out of having a cohort of interns as an undergraduate doesn't really happen. And ESA now is actually part of recruiting people for that, as well as the GIS Institute and then geology field camp. So we're getting a wide range, and those can occur any time of the year, not just summer. Other programs in Woods Hole that are really important are the Partnership Education Program. It's called PEP. And that's a 10-week course that is typically housed at Sea Education. And it has advisors from all 6 science institutions. So for everything from biology, ecology, chemistry, geology, and physics and engineering. And then finally, there's another, and that is targeted towards rising juniors and seniors, but people all the way from rising sophomores to people who have just graduated have been able to participate in that program. And then finally, the other undergrad program I'd like to highlight is the HUI REU Summer Student Fellow Program. And those are only for rising seniors. And so that has a 1-year window that you can apply for. And again, it's across the entire spectrum of ocean sciences, which wetlands on the marine side definitely fit in. And we've brought people in almost yearly to work on wetland projects. For people who might be in graduate school, either in a master's or a PhD program, we have opportunities that are co-sponsored through NSF and USGS. They're called GRIP and Intern. And those programs, try to pop up those programs require you for GRIP to be a recipient of an NSF GRFP, or for intern for your advisor to have an NSF funding, any type of NSF funding. And so those are kind of not really well advertised. The best thing to do is to find a USGS scientist who has either a research field or research capability you're really interested in, and contact them and talk about this opportunity, because the scientist like myself would submit an application to USGS, and then they would collaborate with your advisor to create an application to submit to NSF, who the funding is actually comes from. But that can be a really great way to do an internship during your graduate studies that helps attain a new either study site, new sampling ability, something new that adds and strengthens what you're doing. And then finally, for post-PhD, we have a strong Mendenhall postdoctoral fellowship program, which is 2 full years of support at the GS-12 level. Again, my advice there would be to develop a relationship with a USGS scientist and early and help work on creating opportunities there, because those opportunities are something that we have to write a proposal to participate in. We're not automatically guaranteed participation as a scientist in. And so all these pictures that you've seen on these slides have actually been of interns who've worked with me, and this is my current postdoc who's on Mendenhall. So there's great opportunities for wetland science in the USGS. So, yep. Sorry, just checking chats. Great. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Megan. So thank you, Megan, for your awesome presentation. And once again, that information will be available to all of you at the end of this session. Up next, we have Rachel McCracken from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And Rachel, you can feel free to share your screen as well.
Thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Thanks everybody for having me. My name is Rachel McCracken. I'm a diversity recruiter with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm going to be sailing through information, so sorry if I'm talking quickly. To start, the mission of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we work with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. Maybe wetland science kind of marries the best with protecting the habitats for the fish, wildlife, and plants that we are protecting. Just to give you a snapshot of what our the agency looks like in terms of employees, offices, and our diversity, we have roughly 7,000 to 8,000 employees, depending on, you know, if it's high seasonal time or not. We have 8 regional offices throughout the United States, plus a headquarters in DC. 562 wildlife refuges, 135 fish hatcheries and aquatic centers, 86 ecological service offices, and 58 law enforcement offices. And I'll talk a little bit more about what those do in a minute. Given, you know, recent events and the current civil rights movement we're going through, I wanted to talk a little bit about diversity in the service and things we've been doing, but I wanted to highlight them especially since it's so poignant right now in current events. But so I actually work for the Office of Diversity and Inclusive Workforce Management, and about 10 years ago, we recognized in the service that our representation among minorities, women, and individuals with disabilities wasn't where it should be. So we have a team of diversity recruiters that are particularly trying to target minority-serving institutions that have degree programs that meet our biology series positions, working with organizations like Society for Wetland Scientists, also minorities in agriculture and natural resources related sciences, and similar sort of student organizations, so that we can really try to get our recruitment numbers up where we're underrepresented. We also have a barrier analysis team that really tries to work on retention within Fish and Wildlife Service, again, among those groups of women, minorities, and individuals with disabilities. So we invite employees each year to participate and talk about what sort of barriers there are to getting employment with the Fish and Wildlife Service, staying with the service, feeling included, and then using that information to help produce some results. We just recently, in the last few months, have stood up our first employee resource group within the service for LGBTQ+ employees, and it's Pride Month, so we've been working hard on getting a variety of different ways that you can engage with our LGBTQ+ employees. Like, we have a Wild Pride quilt where you can, it's a virtual quilt where you can submit patches, you know, detailing what your experience might be as part of the LGBTQ+ community or an ally. We're also working on developing our land acknowledgement statement, recognizing that the lands that we have our refuges on are first and foremost Native American lands that were stolen, and we need to recognize and acknowledge that. And then regularly we have diversity celebrations, history, and training events for all of our staff, whether it's virtual or in person. And then local refuges and field stations are also putting together some diversity and inclusion initiatives at the more local level as well. I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. So moving forward to kind of what the different programs, or we call them programs, but what the different departments are within Fish and Wildlife Service. The National Wildlife Refuge System is the largest one. So that's where we, you know, actually have lands that we're protecting for endangered species or other protected species. Our Fisheries and Aquatic Conservation Program is, I was going to say twofold, but it has more than that, but primarily it either has fish hatcheries that we're raising endangered or other economically significant fish, or we're doing fish research kind of out in the wild where they live in rivers. Our Ecological Services Program primarily is consulting with other agencies or writing biological opinions and environmental assessments about how we can protect endangered species. Migratory Birds Program, working on permitting for bird takes and things like that. And then we have kind of two arms of law enforcement. The Office of Law Enforcement is working on preventing and enforcing the illegal trade of endangered and other protected species. And then our other law enforcement that's part of the Wildlife Refuge System is more of what you think of when you think of like game warden. So they're doing more education and enforcement of kind of hunting and fishing and you know, trespassing and that sort of thing, but on our national wildlife refuges. And then we have external affairs that works on, you know, congressional affairs and that sort of thing, websites, any sort of messaging that we're doing. And then budget administration would be kind of the last time doing kind of other stuff. To give you kind of a breakdown of Fish and Wildlife Service careers and what's available, a little over half of our employees fall into one of our biologist series positions. And then the numbers kind of on the right there, if you can see them, are how many employees we currently have in each of those job series. Followed by administration and other sorts of positions. Wage grade is our laborer positions, maintenance mechanic, tractor operators, that sort of thing. And then again, you'll see law enforcement and education at the bottom. I talked a little bit about all of these programs already, but just to kind of give you a sense of what kinds of positions are within each program. Oh, and I just noticed there's an error. The second one under First National Wildlife Refuge System, the second one should say Fish and Aquatic Conservation Program. But the biological science technician position I want to point out in particular because those are more of the entry-level positions, so might be more appealing to students who are getting ready to graduate or already graduated. Typically, we hire those at the GS4 or GS5 level, and they can be either seasonal or permanent. In fact, we have some biological science technician positions posted right now in case you're interested in those. But typically, they're supporting a higher level fish biologist or wildlife biologist in their field research and data collection and that sort of thing. And I went through that a lot faster than I thought I would, but I can go through a few more slides, but I wanted to cover a few more things on this slide. We also have internship programs that I want to point out. It's not on this slide, but you can email me, and in the flyers that I have included for distribution afterwards, there's two particular internship programs I want to point out. One is called the Directorate Fellowship Program. It sounds sort of similar to some of the ones that the USGS was talking about. It's a rigorous 12-week summer program for rising undergraduate seniors or graduate degree students. You can't graduate before you finish the fellowship, so it has to be before you're graduating. But the really great thing about that program is once you complete your degree and complete that fellowship, you get 2 years of direct hire authority, meaning you don't have to apply through USA Jobs. The program is really competitive, but if you get through that program, you know, having the ability to circumvent USA Jobs is, if you haven't gotten the point yet, huge, really critical. So that program is really excellent to look into. And the opportunities for DFP generally fall into one of two categories, one being more biology centered and one being more education and outreach focused. And then the other internship program I mentioned is the Career Discovery Internship Program, and it's for underclassmen, really, you know, just trying to learn a little bit more about what Fish and Wildlife Service does. That program is open every summer, also 12 weeks. It doesn't offer that direct hire authority, but it's a great feeder program into our Directorate Fellowship Program. And then the rest of our internships can be posted or can be found on the Student Conservation Association website there on the right-hand side, or Green and Youth Foundation website as well. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about that. I have a few slides about USA Jobs. I gathered that some other folks kind of went through it as well, but one of the things that I would point out is the really important part about tailoring your resume to the position description, but also the applicant questionnaire. So kind of the process works, you'll submit your resume, you get taken onto this questionnaire. As many people pointed out, HR is not going to read between the lines. It really needs to be very specific. So the link for the questionnaire is usually at the bottom of the USA Jobs announcement. Maybe in one of those sections you have to expand, but find that link, go to it, and make sure you're building your resume off of that questionnaire. So if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, one of the questions will say, collect biological data according to established protocols. You might put that into your resume and expand upon it exactly how you had that experience. So collect biological data and include what sort of data it was, you know, size of the fish or whatever species it was, that sort of thing, according to established protocols, and then a list what those protocols were, maybe expanding upon it using whatever instrumentation you used, but make sure it's very clear to HR, this experience in my resume corresponds to that part of the questionnaire, because that's what's going to get you ranked highest among applicants. I'll just go back to my contact information now, and I think I'm out of time.
Thank you, Rachel, for this awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Vanessa Lockhead and Lynx Jen, who will be presenting from UTEP, their new NSF Critical Zone grant that they have available for students. So I'll let you guys take over.
Thanks, Anjali. So hi everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces and names in the participant list. My name is Vanessa, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague Li Xin, and we're professors at the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm a wetland ecologist, and Li Xin is a soil scientist. We are we're here to tell you about an exciting new grant that we really just got a couple of weeks ago, and it's a major grant in the area of something called the Critical Zone. And we're going to tell you a little bit about the project. And in particular, we are looking for up to 8 grad students to start in the next 1 to 3 years. So tomorrow, both Li Xin and I will be able to interview people who are looking for positions right now, but also interview people who might be looking for positions in the next couple of years. So there's a lot of opportunity in this grant for some grad student positions. And Li Xin's in charge of the slide, so Li Xin, thank you. So we're at UTEP, the University of Texas at El Paso. It's obviously part of the UT system. If you don't know about where El Paso is, we're right on the border of Mexico, New Mexico, and Texas. It's a really interesting place. It's hot, so if you don't like cold weather, and if you don't like rain, this is the place for you. We're in the Chihuahuan Desert. It's a very dry environment, but because it's such a dry environment, the little water that we do have is very important, and it's one of the things that both Li Xin and I are interested in doing research in. So UTEP is an R1 university, which means it has both undergraduate and graduate programs, but it's also very high research activity university. We have 72 bachelors, 72 masters, and 22 doctoral programs. We have 25,000 students, so we're a good size, a medium-sized university. And obviously, because of our location, we have a unique sort of cultural environment. 80% of the local population is Hispanic, and indeed 80% of the students at UTEP are Hispanic, especially at the graduate level. I mean, at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, we have a little bit more diversity, maybe 60% Hispanic, 40% other races and ethnicities. Yeah, I think I said all that, Li Xin. Next slide, please. So you may have seen on the title slide that the project we're working on is something called the Critical Zone Collaborative Network. I always get the name wrong. Li Xin can correct me later. Or CZ, Critical Zone. So what is the critical zone? It might not be a term that you're familiar with, although I know that you're already familiar with what it is. It's basically the upper zone of the Earth. It's the place where the action happens on the Earth. It ranges from the top of the canopy all the way down through the soil, the rock, into aquifers. People working in the CZ look at how the vegetation is connected to the soil, how soil might be connected to weathering minerals and bedrock. We might talk about things like how resources like carbon and nutrients cycle among these various components, and how water interacts with these components and changes chemical rates of reaction and so on. And so that's essentially what a CZ is. And I'm going to let Li Xin, who's the PI of this grant, talk more specifically about the project, and she'll give you our contact information at the end.
Yeah, so as Vanessa said, critical zone is the surface of the Earth, and that's critical because it's really relevant to the environment and also our society, because it provides freshwater resources and the food we need. And critical zone is very complex, and especially in the dry land, we are really unique in different perspectives. First of all, the dry land, is characterized by being super dry. So we're really limited by how much water we have. Not only that, each time we have water, we tend to have thunderstorms. So it's very interesting to understand, how the water moves through the critical zone systems and how it interact with the soils and also become available to the ecosystem and support, the functions and services and things like that. The dry land is also unique that some of you might have heard about this term. It's called pedogenic carbonate. So basically in dryland, instead of mineral weathering away, being leached away to the groundwaters, actually secondary phase like carbonate form in the dryland critical zone and form these really continuous caliche layers that really control the soil architecture and that moderate exactly how water grows, how water moves through the critical zone, but also how the roots grow into the system. And dryland is very important for carbon fluxes as well, not only from organic carbon perspectives, but inorganic carbon as well. And some of the dryland, natural dryland are converted to irrigated agriculture system to support food demand. And because our unique climate and soil structure, that cause a lot of problems. One of the most important one is probably the salt buildup in the soils. Eventually, the soil becomes so salty that the crops cannot grow there anymore. And also there are other perspectives related to how the metals or nutrients are moving from the soil into the underlying groundwaters and therefore might contaminate the underlying groundwaters. So our study areas include sites from Texas, New Mexico, and Idaho. So we cover different climate conditions. Within each site, we also have natural dryland, as well as agriculture systems. We can look at different land uses. We also cover upland areas like the picture show here in Reynolds Creek, but also in playa areas where water become more available during the monsoon seasons. So for this project, we have different focus areas. Depending on your interest, you can work on more water-related questions or nutrients-related, especially phosphorus, because it's typically not available in the dryland. And you can also work on carbon. But I want to emphasize that this project will support, postdocs, graduate students, undergrad. We also have 13 principal investigators. So you will be working in a very interdisciplinary group. And depending on your interest, you will interact with a lot of other researchers as well. And also I want to mention at the end of the slide, we have a lot of education and outreach activities. And so you'll be able to work with undergrad students and other researchers to work with high school students and teachers and develop very interesting education and outreach activities. So here are my and Vanessa's contact information. Feel free to email us if there are particular interests in these projects. I also listed our programs that you can potentially enroll in, geology, biology, but also interdisciplinary environmental science and engineering programs. So yeah, talk to us if you're interested. These are really exciting projects we'll be working on in the next 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Once again, those resources, we've been adding them to the Slack channel, and they will also be at the interviews tomorrow. So feel free to talk with them more there. Up next, we have Kristen Koski from the Audubon Society, and she will be talking about the CLI program. So Kristen, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. And you can start sharing your screen whenever you like.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Kosick, and I'm here today to talk about a program specifically with Audubon, Florida, called the Conservation Leadership Initiative. So if the idea of something being central in Florida specifically turns you off, stay tuned because I'll talk about some experiences outside of Florida here in a few minutes too. But I specifically run the CLI program. And CLI is a little bit different from some of the other opportunities that you've heard about today so far. So CLI specifically is more of a networking and professional development opportunity rather than an opportunity to just hear about job postings within Audubon. So CLI is, see if I can, there we go. CLI is designed as a year-long co-mentoring leadership program. So really what this means is our students come into the program, they're with us for an entire year, and they are given different opportunities to connect with professionals and members within the Audubon Florida network. This program has been around for a while now. It started in 2011, and for 7 years, this program really existed as a day-long experience. We invited college students to attend our annual conference called the Assembly, and there they were able to network with professionals and engage with Audubon leaders. And it proved to be a really valuable program, but what we really learned from our students is that they were really looking for a more immersive experience than that. So just this last school year, we got the funding to expand into a year-long program. So now the students start at that Audubon Assembly, but then they're with us for an entire year, which gives them a whole lot more opportunity to connect and get experience through the Audubon network. So we pair our college students with an Audubon leader, and then they continue to work together throughout the year to learn more and get more involved in the Audubon programs. The program gives students leadership opportunities. We go through workshops as well, so they can get some more hands-on experience in conservation. The program has some specific organizational components to it. Once again, that mentorship is a huge part of it. This gives a lot of space for our students to talk one-on-one and build relationships with people that are in the conservation field on a routine basis. Audubon is also known for its partnerships, so it's a really great opportunity to network and not only meet people within the Audubon network, but meet the people that Audubon works with so closely, including a lot of the organizations that you all have already heard from today. Once again, they get to attend our annual assembly, a great networking opportunity too, but then they're also plugged into lots of regional events throughout the state. So this is everything from field trips to leadership workshops and things of the sort, training opportunities and volunteer events too. Some of the volunteer events include things like citizen science opportunities. So if you're really just getting started in the conservation field, that's a great way to start and do some hands-on things. Volunteer experiences too, as well as annual fundraisers. And as much not fun as annual fundraisers sound, it's a wonderful opportunity to network with lots of people across the conservation network. So some of our students have been able to make some great connections through those fundraiser events. Lots of skill building opportunities in our program as well, including we were able to send our students for free this year up to lobby in Tallahassee for Everglades policy, and they found that to be a wonderfully valuable experience. They've also received training on communicating conservation messages. We're about to go through a resume building workshop, as well as skill building like identifying birds and birds specifically. So they're also tuned into regional events, so they get more involved with their local Audubon chapters too. So that's a great way to get involved at the very local level. This year was our first year with our expanded cohort. We really try to get a diverse group of students from across the entire state. So our cohort this year was represented by 13 different colleges and universities across the state. And this upcoming year, we're working on better connecting to Florida colleges that we have not yet, or this year, didn't get a chance to represent within our cohort. So if you're currently at a school in Florida, that especially one that we haven't connected with yet, we would love to get you involved in our program. Our students have told us that CLI is a highly valuable program. It gives them opportunities to connect with people, but also just a lot of informal opportunities to practice the skills and apply the things that they're learning within their classroom settings. So we've had a lot of really great feedback in the program and a lot of great outcomes from it. So we've had students go on to be environmental consultants, work for the Florida State Park Service, and actually Angeli and Stephanie, who organized this today, have both been a part of the CLI program too. So I guess I can use them as a testament to say that they obviously found value in the program because they've asked me to come and speak to you all about it today. So our applications for next year open in August, so right as the next semester starts. So in the chat box, I know they posted the link to our website. So here in the next month or so, we'll start to post the content for the applications, but they'll open in August if you're interested. So beyond the CLI program, there are a lot of other opportunities within Audubon. So here on the screen, I have some that are specific to Audubon, Florida, and you all will also have access to a flyer that kind of goes in depth as to what these look like. But I want to remind everyone that Audubon is a national organization and there are opportunities across every state. All of the state networks, they have internship opportunities as well as your local chapters do too. We have community science programs across the entire country as well. So if you're looking for some hands-on experience, that's a great way to do so. Audubon recently launched a campus chapters program as well. So this is an opportunity for students to basically combine an Audubon chapter or create an Audubon chapter that is also a club on campus. So this is a great way to kind of start getting involved with Audubon while you're still at your school as well. Not to mention your local chapter as well. Each local chapter is involved in a variety of different conservation projects. So it's a great way to kind of step up and be a leader in your local environment for conservation work. I also want to remind people that although Audubon is known for being a bird organization, that the purpose of Audubon is to protect birds and their habitats in which they need to survive. So it's not only a birding club, it's also a conservation organization. So we work really hard in the fields of climate, water, land management, policy and advocacy, ecological monitoring, hydrologic studies, and more. So don't write us off as just a birding club. We need scientists with us so we can continue to protect the places that birds need in order to survive. So I will not be in the mock interviews tomorrow, but if you would like to learn more about the CLI program, or if you just have questions about opportunities that Audubon has in general, I would be happy to answer any questions you have, or even do my best to connect you with people that are involved in some of the projects that Audubon has going on around the country. So please feel free to email me, and definitely, if you're interested, check out the CLI website so we can get you connected with Audubon.
Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Bill from Maryland Board of Public Works. And Bill, you can go ahead and get started and share your screen if you would like.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Good. Okay, I'll have something to share on the screen in just a moment. Thanks for having me as part of this. I'm happy to be the kind of cleanup panelist here. I just want to say I have been a wetland scientist for 24 years, and that followed 12 years as a landscape architect. And my goal way back then, kind of in changing from landscape architecture, was really to merge the design skills with the ecological skills through getting an advanced degree in plant and soil science. And I was very focused on really wanting to do wetland creation projects. Once out in the field, I really worked in private consulting for 18 years and was able to do wetland creation projects, and found also through doing a lot of wetland delineation projects that really enabled me to have a great toolbox for reference wetlands as well. So my most recent transition 6 years ago actually was from private consulting into public agency work. And since then I've been working for the state of Maryland. So I do not actually have a specific offer of employment to discuss with you, but what I'd like to do is spoke with two colleagues in private consulting who are willing to share their perspectives right now on the job market and what they really recommend for people. So mainly what I want to do is share their advice. So let me see if I can screen share now. Can you see the considerations for new grads?
We don't see it. There should be a green button at the bottom of your screen that says share screen, and you should be able to select whichever screen you would like to share.
Did that work?
No, I don't see anything.
Then you know what, I'll just go on. First off, actually, it's a company I'd worked for 10 years. It's a large engineering firm in Baltimore. They do employ over 30 natural resource department people. So what the manager for that department shared that I'd like to just share with all of you who may be looking is that while they don't anticipate natural resource hires for the next year, that they did have some specific recommendations for what they look for. And what I thought was interesting was this manager actually shared his kind of seasoned experience in terms of past recessions in 1982 and 1992, in 2008, when he talked about how at that time many new graduates would often choose to continue their education in graduate school, or at that time maybe taking an opportunity in the field of interest at a lower pay. But his suggestion was that, given this current situation, if graduates find an opportunity, a firm, an organization that they are really thrilled and interested in their work, that they consider supporting as an unpaid intern or as a volunteer. And though he cautioned about legal or liability issues if you work out a situation like this, and I think what he was really concerned about there was, particularly in private consulting, if you're going to do field work, that there may be, in terms of working in the field and injuries, there may be considerations to think about there. But he still felt that this approach, it's worth considering to really gain relevant experience. Because he shared, in my experience too, I guess full disclosure, I actually had worked for this company for 10 years before moving to the public sector for the state. And I was part of the interviewing team kind of toward the end of my tenure there. But we really found that the graduates, many times when there were dozens and dozens of resumes, that the resumes that really had internship experience really rose to the top, really were the most compelling, just because it showed a real motivation for those people. So at any rate, those resumes really would be, or those people, those graduates would more easily find employment later. The other company I talked to was more mid-sized natural resource firms specializing specifically natural resource issues. So they would employ mainly many people who would be kind of wetland science based. While they also were not planning on hiring any entry-level people in the next 6 months to a year, they also really, suggested internships. And I have to admit, it was interesting to sit through these presentations so far and learn about internships with Fish and Wildlife and USGS and Audubon. It sounds like a lot of opportunities out there. So this person for this mid-sized firm really was suggesting, the internships are obviously a great way to gain great experience for entry-level staff. And this company typically does offer paid internships, though not really at the present time. And they also shared that they will often hire many of the people who had worked there as interns for full-time positions when full-time positions become available. One other interesting point that they made about internships is that it was really allowing students or young professionals to learn what they like and do not like about our field, about wetland science. And they specifically cited a college intern who thought they really liked field work until they performed field work for an entire summer, then decided that that was not something they really enjoyed. So, you know, I thought these two conversations with managers that were friends of mine would be helpful to share. And lastly, you know, I just wanted to share that, you know, since we're participating in this opportunity fair, the session really caused me to reflect on, and this is a little more philosophical than practical, but really reflect on how opportunity is created. You know, it's not always something that just happens or falls into our lap. You know, if it does, fantastic, but more realistically, you know, and particularly at this time in this economy, one has to really work hard to create opportunities. So I thought that the advice from the two companies I had talked to, as well as all the information that was really provided about internships, really supports this concept. And lastly, I just, you know, wanted to share an adage from a Buddhist mentor of mine who really talked about, you know, whatever work we do, whether it's exactly in our field or it's something that's slightly related, really kind of the importance of giving it 100%. Since really giving our all, it's like the best cause we can make for our future success. So hopefully some of these pointers were a little bit helpful. That's really all I have to directly share.
Thank you so much, Bill. And if you send me those slides, I can make sure it goes out to the students.
Sure.
Thank you. Up next, we have Jack Henderson from the National Rivers Project Coordinator. And if Jack, if you would like to share your screen and whatnot throughout the presentation, feel free to do so. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? This is Jack.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome, thanks so much. So I'm gonna share a screen here in just a second. Well, I guess before I do that, I'll just give a brief introduction and then I'm gonna go through a few different screen shares and different web links and things like that. So thanks so much for the opportunity to be here today and share. The premise for this is that I work for an organization, it's a national nonprofit, in some ways similar to the Society for Wetland Scientists in that it serves as a professional organization for practitioners and educators and those that study and work on certain types of water bodies. But the River Management Society is the organization that I work for. And we are a national nonprofit focused in the United States and North America as well, that supports and provides benefits and supporting opportunities to those that manage rivers, study rivers, work on rivers, etc. And primarily, we do a lot with folks that manage recreational aspects of rivers, so folks that work on permitting systems on Western rivers or protect rivers as wild and scenic or manage water trails at the state levels and things like that. And so that falls within wetland science as well as recreational aspects and things of that nature. But one of our core, sorry, I'm just going to share a screen here. Let's see, share screen. I'm going to do, let's see, this one. So I think it's now on your screen. I'm going to share it to the RMS homepage. Can you all see the RMS homepage here? Is that the right screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. So this is our homepage here. So I just wanted to give a plug for this organization. We do have one job opportunity open right now. We're a very small team, staff of about 4 or 5 people in total. But a lot of the work that we do is kind of serving as like a friends group per se to the river managing aspects and river managing agencies of the federal government. And so the Park Service is a big partner, the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife Service, and occasionally the Army Corps of Engineers and Bureau of Reclamation. And so we serve as a friends group basically to those organizations by creating and providing projects at their request and carrying those out. And so one of those, which is a project that I work on, is the National Rivers Project. And that's basically, it's a geospatial, it's a GIS database and associated trip planning tool that focuses on paddling trips around the United States. And so this is more focused, this project in particular is more focused on recreation rather than academic science per se, but it does definitely overlap with other people's studies in terms of what other people are working on. And so going back for just a second, RMS as an organization, we're a membership-based organization where we have student members, we have professional career members, we have people working in academic sectors, science sectors, on-the-ground management, practitioners, etc. And so before I get more in depth into the job that we're hiring for right now, I wanted to speak a little bit more about what RMS does, because I think there's a lot of parallels in certain ways with the Society for Wetland Scientists. And I think that, especially students looking to get into a career or a job or a field working with water, I think might benefit from cross-organizational membership with RMS. And so you can see that in the website there. I think there's the links been posted in the chat box, and I could also follow up with any links or questions after the fact. But I invite folks to explore our website, see the kind of projects that we're working on, and then consider joining as a member. There's a student membership, which is much cheaper than a professional membership, and we're always happy to work with folks depending on what their interest is. Membership benefits include, in my opinion, the top and foremost benefit that a membership offers is basically just granting you passage into this really great network of professionals and spanning from early career to people that have been involved for a long time, to other organizations, etc., that can be a really great resource for folks interested in asking questions about projects they're working on things they're trying to learn more about, gaining insight or examples of other parts of the country, etc. Our membership is composed of, depending on the year, anywhere from 400 to 600 professionals that work on rivers all around the U.S. and a little in parts of Canada as well. And so it's a vast network of people and organizations associated with those individuals that can speak to issues with how to manage user traffic on a paddling section, or how to manage and work on cattle issues, impeding into sensitive streams, or water quality issues or protection issues, kind of all spanning the spectrum. And I imagine that many of our members are probably also indeed members of SWS. I don't know the numbers on that, but I'd imagine there's definitely overlap. And so, and another big asset of membership is that it grants you, we have two job boards, both of which are both built out from our members submitting positions that they've heard about that are available in their organizations that have come across their desk, as well as we do a variety of just gleaning and researching and plugging jobs in as they come across our desks. And so as a member, you have access to that careers page. We have it split out by early career, as well as just a general job board. But we recognize that, like some other folks have been mentioning in this presentation and in this webinar and gathering, is that sometimes it's hard for folks, getting into a career for the first time. It's hard to kind of get in initially, but once you're in with an organization or a field, it can be easier to network. And so we speak to that, and we try to oblige and provide opportunities for folks that are interested in working on rivers. Additionally, with that, for students that are, and I apologize, it just started raining really hard here. I'm in North Carolina, and so I have a metal roof, so it might be loud for a second, but maybe not. One thing that we recognize with students, especially in folks working in academia, whether undergraduate, graduate, or PhD, it is the value of creating a network of people a network of students at that time. And so we created a program called the Rivers Studies and Leadership Certificate Program. And I can navigate to it on here, or I can also send these links out after the fact. But the RSLC program, the acronym for Rivers Studies Leadership Certificate, is a collection of about a dozen schools across the country that offer river management-based curriculum as a certificate as part of, you know, a certain program. Like certain schools have it in biology, others have it in recreation management, others have it in their geography programs, etc., just depending on how they're able to host it. But a goal with that is to equip students and also their associated faculty with tools to basically create or to train students to be well prepared for a workforce working in rivers. A big issue we see right now are federal managers and river managers and federal programs rather at the federal level, and then also state programs at the state level, you know, having almost a lack of people interested and able to go into those fields. And so we're trying to create opportunities for folks to become better educated and better prepared to apply for those jobs. And so I encourage you to look into that program as well. And like I said, I'm happy to share all these links after the fact. I was a little bit disorganized coming into this in terms of preparing materials, but I'm happy to share things after the fact. And so the job that we're hiring for right now is a bit unique, and I'm not sure how much overlap there is with y'all's interest in programs, but I would definitely love to talk a bit about it.
Hey, Jack, I think we're having a hard time hearing you. Just got mute, I think maybe.
Sure. Is that better now or still scattered?
I could hear him fine the whole time.
Yeah, I was hearing him fine too.
Okay.
Sure.
Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay.
I'm happy to make any adjustment if need be here. I think, as far as I know, I think my connection and things like that are okay. And I'm looking back at the chat box here now. Thanks so much for those that put in the links to the particular programs. That's awesome. That's what I intended to do, so I appreciate that. And I'm seeing here now that I've got just a few minutes left. So I'm not sure if folks can hear me. But
yeah,
so,
we can hear you, Jack. So just go ahead and continue, and I'll be working with Anjali to try to troubleshoot her audio issues. It seems like it's a bug that's going around today, but you can go ahead and continue.
Sure. Yeah, I can certainly imagine that in this world of virtual communication now, problems abound. But yeah, I just wanted to give just a brief overview of the position we're hiring for. So one of the core programs that RMS works on, in addition to sharing information amongst managers, is what's called the National Rivers Project, and it's a geospatial database and trip planning tool designed to help connect people nationwide with paddling experiences and ways to get on the water, specifically regarding recreation and boating. And there are a variety of tools already existent for this, or in existence for this, on regional basis. And American Whitewater has one specific to whitewater and things like that. But most of the ones available currently are just state by state or program by program. And so what we wanted to do was to create, and kind of at the bequest of Park Service and other federal agencies and state groups, create a tool that basically spanned the entire geography of the U.S., but also spanned multiple types of paddling opportunities in terms of whitewater paddling versus canoeing, versus lake paddling, etc. And another thing, a part of that too, is that federal agencies that manage federally designated wild and scenic rivers, which is a unique protection granted to certain federally managed rivers around the country, the information about how those were protected is commonly available, but how to paddle on them really was not. This was not a big focus of outreach surrounding them. And so we wanted to create, a database and more so just a trip planning tool or a web map per se that folks could use to plan paddling trips on those rivers, water trails at the state and federal level, and then whitewater reaches as well. And so we created there we go. The National Rivers Project website on that screen here now. And basically we're looking to hire someone to continue expanding this project. I've been working on it myself for the last 5 to 6 years or so. And I'll be continuing to do that, but we're at a point now where we're able to expand the team. And for the last 5 to 6 years, it's basically been me and a handful of volunteers and some other folks working with federal agencies, working with state water trail programs, individuals, nonprofits, etc., to glean together GIS data and basically put it into a common schema. And so you're looking at the web page here now, one of them. I won't get too in depth into it for sake of time, but I want to just give a visual of what it looks like. And so basically every river, or every segment of river in this database has the same attributes as every other single one. And so a whitewater river in North Carolina is going to have the same attribute or types of attributes listed as a canoe paddling trail in the Midwest. And so information about who manages it, what the difficulty class is, the name, the section name, bits of information about, is it good for fishing, or can you camp along it, things like that. And so the position we're looking to hire for is someone to help us continue working on that. And so basically, essentially, it's just someone that's interested and has basic abilities in GIS, definitely someone that has interest in paddling, or in water sports, and someone that has, basic knowledge of federal river management, state river management, things of that nature. This position is definitely a little more focused on recreation and less about environmental science per se, but I definitely think a lot of people have overlaps in interest for those two types of work. And so that said too, our RMS, definitely we have occasional internships and jobs that span the spectrum from recreation to science, etc. And so even if this isn't a great fit, I encourage you to keep an eye on the webpage on our website, and definitely encourage you, if nothing else, to consider becoming a member. I think the student rate is pretty inexpensive. I think it's like $25 or $30. And just, even if that's an issue to you, reach out to us and we can probably work something out. We're trying to, to grow that membership regardless of people's ability to pay. So keep an eye on that. And with that, I think I have a couple minutes left here. I'm not sure if we're doing live questions or not, but I'm happy to follow up independently. If not, I'll put my email in the chat box. And otherwise, thank you for the opportunity. Oh, I see a question in the chat box. Sorry, I'm just looking at this here now. I know that each state has a specific subject matter expert, state geologist, agronomist, state watershed scientists, etc. Would you happen to know if each state has a state riverine scientist? That's a great question. One thing that RMS is working on is developing a stronger network of state river managers. Right now, we've been really good about working, with everyone within federal agencies. We're trying to develop more at the state level. Most of my work is centered around state level folks that work on water trails and recreational aspects of rivers, less of watershed science. So I don't know the answer to that question explicitly, but that type of question would be a really great question to put out to our membership, given that much of our membership is composed of state level individuals and professionals. So with that, I'm happy to put that question out to the public, but would also encourage the folks that ask that to engage in the membership as well.
Awesome, excellent. Thank you so much, Jack, for sharing all of that. And I know it definitely looks like something that I'm sure we have a couple of people on here that have the skill set and certainly the interest in river systems to be in touch with you and ask for more information. So with that, I wanted to go ahead and open it up for questions. I know we're still working on some audio difficulties with Anjali, but we do have some time to open the floor up for any questions that have not been answered yet. So if any of the participants have a question for any of the panelists, Please go ahead and use the raise hand function, and I'll go ahead and call on you and unmute you so that you can ask. And if not, I'm going to try to pull up. I've been keeping track of some of the questions in the chat, and I'll see if there's any of those that haven't been answered, but our panelists have just been on point with answering all these questions in real time. So thank you all so much for that. Let's see, I see there was a question. I think this question came up during Rachel's session with Fish and Wildlife. And it looks like Lambert wanted to know if there are any post-bac opportunities with Fish and Wildlife. If you're still on, and maybe you could answer that.
Sorry, I don't see the question. If there's any what opportunities?
Post-baccalaureate?
Not explicitly. We have opportunities that could be term positions or temporary positions for folks that are in a post-bac situation, but we don't have any opportunities specifically for a post-baccalaureate.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Maggie wanted to know if we could follow up with you. Oh, this is a question for James specifically. So James, if you could just drop your email in the chat, that would be great. I know we're also going to be putting together a list of resources and some of the questions that came up during the session, as well as just general notes of what people said on here, of what all of our panelists said. So we will be putting that out through the Slack channels and also emailing that to all participants after the event. So rest assured, you will get contact information for anybody that you want to at a later date. All right, any other questions? Yes, Josette, we will have access to the slides. That is something that will be provided as well. When we send out that blast with all of the contact information, the notes, the FAQs, that will all be included as well. Excellent. All right, well, it's looking like we don't have any questions. I just want to reiterate again, just thank all of our panelists who came on and shared about these different opportunities and provided advice that was really, really helpful and very insightful. And I know with everything going on in terms of pandemic, closing down internships, and a lot of summer positions that many students were looking forward to, I know it's been a little bit difficult to kind of wrap our heads around what our career opportunities look like in the future. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come on and join us.